Circle the wagons actually is a term that comes from the 19th century. And we had these large wagon trails going west, claiming land and conquering the frontier, if you will. And when the Native Americans attacked, the best defensive posture was to put the wagons in a circle and then try to defend as best as you can with that configuration. And I thought that that analogy might be a good way to think about investing in terms of circling the wagons. So I'll just go through a few slides and then we'll go through what you guys want to talk about. So this year in Buffett's letter, he had a couple of very candid and great quotes. He said, over the years I've made many mistakes and our extensive collection of businesses consists of a few enterprises that have truly extraordinary economics, many that enjoy very good economic characteristics, and a large group that are marginal. So actually, if you look at the 80 plus acquisitions that Berkshire has done, Warren and Charlie probably themselves would acknowledge that probably at least half are outright mistakes. And this is, the best practitioners of the art. And then he goes on to say, in 58 years of Berkshire management, most of my capital allocation decisions have been no better than so-so. And our satisfactory results have been the product of about a dozen truly great decisions, and which he's saying is about once every 5 years. So I tried to basically look at this period from like 65 to 22. And so, you have, let's say, 80 acquisitions in this 58-year period. He probably bought at least 210 stocks. I use 210 for my convenience, so I get to a round number. I like to work with round numbers, but it's probably a larger number than 210. And his key hires, I'm expecting that in the last 58 years, he had at least 10 key hires, which were very important to Berkshire. So if you look at these decisions, there's about 300 important decisions. And he's saying that 12 move the needle. And so basically, it ends up being something like 4%. And we have 4% from the gods of investing, which is doesn't give us a lot of confidence. And I took a stab at what the 12 businesses might be, or the 12 decisions might be. One of them we know is Ajit, so we put his picture up there. Because they've always pointed out that the single best decision they made was the search fee they paid to hire Ajit Jain. And there's a guy who used to, I think theoretically still works at Berkshire, Michael Goldberg. And Michael Goldberg, I think now must be in his 80s. And Michael Goldberg was the guy who hired Ajit. And he hasn't really been active in Berkshire for probably more than 20 years. So Warren's kept him on the payroll. And every year he gets $1 million from Berkshire. And if he lived till 150, they would keep paying him the $1 million because it's still a great deal. So if you look at the other candidates, Geico is probably one of those, and then Coke, Amex, Seas, Apple, BNSF, Mid-American, National Indemnity, Gillette, Washington Post, and then Cap Cities, ABC. I mean, I think it might be that one or two of these might be off, and Warren or Charlie might say, well, you got maybe 90% or 80%, but most of it are directionally correct. That these were the large or the most important decisions that happened over almost 60 years. And what was really important, if you go back to these decisions, the important thing was not that they bought these 12 or they hired Ajit. The important thing was they kept them all. So it wasn't the buy that was, because they had, 288 mediocre to poor decisions. They kept those two, right? So basically, in effect, they kept all 300. They lived with all 300 decisions. And it was really important for these 12 not to have been deleted or sold. So basically, when we look at this kind of statistic, what we find is that investing is a very forgiving business. But it is forgiving if you don't cut the flowers and you don't water the weeds. So the difficulty comes when you start cutting flowers and watering weeds. But we see this pattern. So when we go and look at his record, with just a dozen decisions, it's just he's completely trounced the S&P. So even with this 4% great decisions, they are at almost 4 million % in annual returns. And basically the S&P is just a very small fraction of that. And